there was one day, I was assistant curator, and it was very early in my assistant curatorship, and the curator asked me if there was something I could do about these unprocessed gifts. Now, for those of you who work in libraries, you know that the term unprocessed gifts means a pile of music. We have no idea what this is. So I said, sure. So I went through it, and I was going through and found some duplicates of things that we had, no big deal. But then came across something, and it was it was in a box, and I opened it up, and it said "Music to a World's Fair Film, World's Communication Building, George Antile, April 1939." I said, "Oh, this is interesting. You know, it's George Antile, American piece. I'm not an Antile expert. I've not heard of the piece, but you know, it's by Antile." It was a pencil score, pencil and ink, signed by him. So I thought, well, then look this up. So I take the New Groves off the shelf. I look for Antile. Laurie Anderson. Okay, I see her. And below that is Antile. Looking through, and then a list of works at the end, right? And so it lists his works, his orchestral works, and then film music. And you go through and you see see the different things that he wrote, and then it lists music to a World's Fair Film, World's Communication Building, 1939, comma, Lost. I got the thing. I'm holding it in my hand. So that was, you know, it's one of these moments you live for as a librarian, to find something like that. We eventually got the premiere performance of that by the American Composers Orchestra in 1995, and that was actually a world premiere. The story there is that Antile did, in fact, write this for the 1939 World's Fair. It was actually recorded. In fact, the parts we have are all marked up. They're stamped with Local 77, the New York Union, and the Players Union, and they're all marked and everything. So you can tell they're all played from, and they had cues written on them. I had to find out about this work, so I went to New York Public Library, called ahead, and found the World's Fair archives. And they have the archives there. And it was very tricky getting in there and finding exactly what I wanted, and they sent me a list of the boxes, the cartons that they had stuff in, and as best I could, I narrowed it down to see what I could find about the George Antile piece. So what I found out was he actually wrote this, but he renegotiated it so that he would become a producer, and not just a composer, but like a co-producer of the film. Now, I'm a composer, but I have to tell you, if any of you ever make a film, don't ever use the composer as a producer of the film. Because what does a composer want? He wants the music to be louder. He wants more music. He wants the levels to go up, right? So I'm reading this between him and the producer and the director of the film. It was a documentary on the ages of communications through the world. You know, people beating on rocks, and then you get the airplanes and teletype and things like that. So it's kind of a documentary. Well, they put it in the World's Communication Building, and so it was in a room like this, only much longer, let's say, and they had dioramas, glass-thin things where when the film wasn't showing, it would go dark, and then this would light up, and it would show you know, a caveman with a fire or something, or smoke or something like that, and then the music would come, and the film and so forth. It would go back and forth. The problem was when the music was playing, you couldn't hear the narrator. It was too loud. And of course, at that time with film, you can't adjust the levels. I mean, the narration and the film stock and the sound is all on the plastic there. So they tried messing with the acoustics and stuff, and they found out that they couldn't do anything with it. So they canned the music. The music was never heard at the World's Fair in 1939. So the first hearing of it was in 1995 at Carnegie Hall. And so, and that came from my being in the right place to stumble across it. Those kinds of things are really fun. The other kinds of things that are fun are, we've got a number of things of projects that we've had through the years. One thing I'm doing right now is I've got a radio show on the local classical station, WRTI. Once a month, I choose music that is in the Fleisher Collection that I can find a recording for. And I try to find as off-the-wall stuff as I can, meaning not that it's goofy or anything, but it's just like not standard repertoire stuff. And I go into the recording studio, and Jack Moore and I, Jack is the programming director and another on-air announcer, he and I gab about the music, and then we play the music, and that's real fun. The thing I'm going to hand out, in fact, I'm going to ask you to hand these, if you just take
pass
some.
Them around?
Yeah, pass them around and do this. Here, if I don't knock that over, perfect. Like the last one, the last month's we did was Horatio Parker. And this came about because, now he's been on my radar screen to do for a while, and we didn't do, let me see, a few years ago we didn't do Horatio Parker, but we did Chadwick's Elegy, which is on the death of Horatio Parker, because George Chadwick and Horatio Parker were good friends. So I've been trying to do some Horatio Parker. The problem is getting recordings, right? Well, Bridge Records just came out with a dandy CD called American Orchestral Song. One of the pieces on there is by Horatio Parker called Cahal Moore of the Wine Red Hand. And it's a lovely, really Wagnerian piece for baritone and orchestra. It's beautiful. And so I also had a recording of, the library had a recording of his organ concerto, which is a cool piece. And so I was able to play that on the radio. And Jan, we were looking at Emanuel Leplin. Is that what we were looking at? Mm-hmm. We've got Emanuel Leplin. I know and have gotten to be good friends with Emanuel Leplin's son. And Leplin is a very interesting story. He's a composer, lived in San Francisco, and Metropolis with San Francisco recorded his stuff. He played in the San Francisco Symphony, but then he came down with polio and was paralyzed almost from the neck down. He could move a couple fingers on one hand, and he was a painter. But he could use, like, he could hold a pencil, and he could still compose, and he painted with his mouth. And I've got pictures, I got paintings of on the computer. It's just remarkable stuff. But he wrote this music before the polio and after he was stricken, and we wanted to find recordings that were done. What was the name of that project?
It was actually the American Symphony Orchestra. It was actually the American Symphony Orchestra as such.
That's right.
Like that.
Which they put.
It's not the one in New York.
Right.
That is currently.
Right.
The American Symphony Orchestra League had an orchestra that put together through workshops. What were those workshops? Well, they
had conductors' works, which they still have.
Conductors and composers' works.
Yeah, and they got the idea. Well, why don't we throw together have an actual orchestra there and do contemporary pieces, have people write stuff for it.
Right.
That was an amazing thing. It was like 1958.
Yeah.
And they recorded them. And we were able to find some of the recordings. And so, this is the kind of cool stuff that we can play on the radio. And so it's the first Saturday of the month, 5 to 6, after the opera, on WRTI 90.1 FM. Anyway, and it's online too. So you just go to WRTI.org and you can listen online.